Well, we need 3 hours with you. This is the first time that at least I have you at the end of my interrogatory line. So I want full privileges. But before we dive into the present, Dr. Swamy, I wanted to start a little in your past. In 1992, you wrote a book called Building a New India, an agenda for Renaissance. And in that, amongst many other ideas, you decried the idea of a Hindu Rashtra as a theological state that you reject. You also spoke of the retrogression of the BJP, the VHP, and its whole agenda as creating passionate dislike of other religions. 8 years later, you wrote a piece in Frontline talking about the creeping fascism of the RSS. And you used a very interesting phrase. You said you hoped that the vibrations of Mother India would prove to be their undoing. Can you talk to us about the idea of India you believed in then, in 1992 and in 2000?
I remember very vividly that the same question was asked of Jayaprakash Narayan too. Right from the independence struggle till 1974, when he teamed up with the Jansangh to fight the dictatorial tendencies, as he said then, of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. This question used to be asked of him. This is what you said, this is what you said, this is what. Well, 2 things. One, RSS doesn't seem to take any umbrage at what I said. And therefore, I don't know why it bothers so many people that this is what you said then, and now you're with them. And as you know, between a wife and a husband, sometimes they have a quarrel, they say awful things. Then they make up, and if the neighbor reminds them of what each said of the other,
I'd love to know in this relationship between the RSS and you, who's the husband and who's the wife. But that apart, Dr. Swamy, what I wanted to know was not so much whether RSS took umbrage or not, and we'll come to why you're in the position you're today. I just wanted to understand what was the idea of India that you espoused then? What is it that you were batting for?
Well, I still would say that we can never be a theocratic state, nor we were ever, except during the Buddhist period and the Mughal period. These are the only 2 periods when India was a theocratic state. And the Indian history, our Hindu history as you might call it, has examples like the Parsis who came to India and have lived without ever even facing discrimination, so much so when the British left India, they tried to seduce them for a reservation for them, like they did for Anglo-Indians. And they flatly said that for 1,000 years the Hindus have looked after us and we don't need you. Same thing with Jews. They were persecuted all over the world. The only country where they never received any persecution was India. And we built their synagogues, they're still there in Cochin and Bombay. And the Israeli parliament, one of the first resolutions they passed was to thank India, that you are the only country which didn't persecute the Jews. So the Hindu tradition, which recognizes all paths lead to God, the only religion which says that. If it is practiced that way, then you can never be a theocratic state where you say Hindu and nothing but Hindu. So in that sense, there's no contradiction between that view of that India can't be a theocratic state and what I'm saying now. I think there is sometimes evolution as over time. I think certainly the Islamic terror has made a lot of difference in the world as to how we see the other religions and what we should do to protect ourselves. And in that context, my ideas have evolved. And I have now a clearly stated position.
So, Dr. Swamy, of course, your positions now are extremely public, and a large part of that is aimed indeed at, at Muslims acknowledging, for instance, of course, there's the famous or infamous, depends on which side of the divide one stands on, your DNA piece, where you said all Muslims should be disenfranchised unless they accept their Hindu ancestry.
That's right.
You know, when you just spoke of India, it's true that that civilizational impulse runs through our country. Our constitution has declared us to be plural, and it is in any case playing itself out. What is it that you hope to achieve by making Muslims say that they have had a Hindu ancestry? Even if they all declared that, what would you achieve by that?
Well, first of all, it's the scientific truth. Because the DNA studies, genetic studies show that the Hindus and Muslims have the same DNA. In fact, North Indian, South Indian, East Indian, West Indian also have the same DNA. Brahmins and scheduled caste also have the same DNA. So this whole British construct of Aryans and Dravidians and invaders is all bogus. We have been one people throughout history. Now, when a Muslim acknowledges that his ancestors are Hindus, and which is the scientific truth, in a sense he becomes as much an owner of this land as anybody else, in the sense of a cultural sense. And that creates also a family atmosphere, that these people's ancestors are the same as mine. It's when the Muslim identifies with Gori and Ghazni that the divide starts coming. And I think, frankly, privately, all Muslims, especially educated Muslims, tell me that what I'm saying is correct. In fact, Farooq Abdullah, if he's coming here, you ask him, he told me that my ancestors are Gaud, Saraswat and Brahmins. And I said, why don't you say it publicly? He said, are you mad? The mullah will kill me. So, that is the issue. I'm seeking the way of uniting. And the Hindu-Muslim divide is one of the most debilitating aspects of our society. And to bring them together, we have to find commonality, and this is a scientific commonality, and that should be accepted.
Before we move to other things, just to contest a little bit of what you've said.
You can ask what you like, I give as good as I get.
I haven't started giving yet. But would you accept that Alexander the Great was Greek? Would you accept that?
Yes, I accept he's Greek, but he never came to India.
He left some of his Greek generals behind. Some of our ancestry is from the Greek generals.
No.
Some of it is from the
This
Persians.
is all Romila Thapar. You've been brainwashed by Romila Thapar.
Well, as also some Hollywood movies.
There's
also
no truth.
Also
There's
the
no
poem.
truth in Alexander coming to India. He came on the borders, he was defeated, and he was heartbroken and died on his way in Persia. All these, this Plutarch, you see, was accompanying historians. They're all gas bags, you see. The Greek writers are all always telling lies. I don't think we should. There's no reference in anything. The Puranas, for example, on whom even the British historians who distort our history, they rely on. How do you know that Ashoka was the son of Bindusara? It's there in the Puranas. They don't have any independent evidence. So according to Puranas, which recorded our history, there is no reference whatsoever to Alexander.
So, you know, again, these are questions that will lead us down 5 hours of debate. So
Sure.
I'm going to let it lie at that. With Romila Thapar
you're surrendering, right?
I'm not surrendering. I'm not surrendering, only delaying our conversation. Right. We'll have you back for part 2. Sure. But when I have you back for part 2, I'm going to have the best genetic scientist with us. And we'll ask whether the Dravidians and the Aryans are really the same race. Yeah. But that apart, partly why this tension arises is because the construct of being or accepting that one is Hindu is a mischievous one, because when it is articulated in modern India, it is by a sleight of hand asking Muslims to somehow accept their Hinduism rather than their Hinduness, which really was a geographical and civilizational construct that everybody west of the, east of the Indus belonged to a Hindu country, which was a geographical construct. But it is not really posited like that. It is somehow to accept that you are somewhat second-class citizens, that you are, that you converted, and that your true origin and your true genius lies with Hindus. Would you accept that if you phrase this differently, people might find it less problematic?
Well, maybe you can give me a formulation. I'll consider it, but...
This is the most humble I've ever seen you on stage.
Well, the sting is yet to come. See, the issue is this: when you want to wake up somebody, sometimes you have to jolt them. It's rude, but that's the only way. Today, if I put it in this way, a debate follows, and out of that, a synthesis comes. I know there's nothing there's no inherent hatred in me for anybody, because my wife is a Parsi, my son-in-law is a Muslim, I have a sister-in-law who's Christian, and I have a brother-in-law who's a Jew. And to date, I have never heard them say I'm communal. I've heard you say, or Telka say, or whatever your successor publications are. But I am not at all of the view of Hindu supremacy, because it will be inconsistent with Hindus. Because when you say all paths lead to God, how can you be supremacist? Yes, the Bible says only my way or the highway. And the Muslims say, if you are not a believer in Allah, then you are a kafir. And there is a special treatment for kafirs. So it, of course, varies from ISIs to other places. But still, you see Pakistan had 21% Hindus, today has 1%. Bangladesh had 33% Hindus, today it is 7%. But here, the Muslim population is a much higher proportion than it was in 1947. See, this country is innately a tolerant country. I don't like this word tolerant because people have, sullied its meaning in the recent days. But the fact is that we accept there are other ways, and our shlokas are there plenty which show that we accept the whole world as something that is ours. So I would say the formulation, the Muslims can have a debate with me and tell me that this is the formulation we can accept. I'm not saying that just because you are descended from Hindus, therefore you have to become like Hindus or you have to become Hindus. But you can have culture almost the same. For instance, today the Parsis, I can't distinguish them from other Hindus. They wear clothes like the Hindus, the traditional Parsis. They speak Gujarati. And they're well versed with all our festivals. They participate in our festivals. This separateness which is being fed by these monks, these clerics, that is what I'm combating.
But in fact, Swami, that brings us back to this point. Everything that you're saying shows that the principle of unity already exists in this country.
Yes.
We have 180 million Muslims. Yes. And like you said, all the
I
other
don't know
countries.
Whether it's 180, but
somewhat average.
Somewhere.
But all the
plus
other
minus 30.
30 as in just 30 or 30 million?
30 million, yeah.
Well, that takes us to another memory of hum panch, hum pachis, all of that. So let's not get into that. But, all the other countries that you described are indeed majoritarian nations. The genius of this country is its plurality.
Yeah.
Everything that you've described, again, shows that that principle is already at play.
Yeah.
So what set you off in this search for an artificial articulation of unity, which already exists? It runs in our blood, as you said, and barring the great rupture of partition, Indian Muslims have continued to live in great harmony in this country. There may be riots, but when you look at the sheer number, even with all the Islamist unrest across the world, you can count on your fingers the number of young boys that may have got involved with terror cells. So why are we trying to alienate an entire community with this kind of crude articulation?
Well, I think they should not get alienated. They should call for a discussion. And it should be...
The question or the answer?
So I would say, see, when a community refuses to accept facts, then the problem arises for people like me. Now, I'll give you an example. I'm dealing with this Ram temple matter. Now, the faith of the Hindus is that Ram was born in a particular place. Science has now proved that is archaeological survey of India's work, court supervised by the Allahabad High Court, has proved that there was a temple pre-existing. which was demolished. And on that a mosque was built. Now mob went and demolished that masjid, for which a criminal case is going on. Now, if you look at the status of a mosque in, say, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, all the way to Iran, including Pakistan, they say, and it is part of the Islamic theology, that a masjid is only a facilitation center for reading namaz. And namaz can be read anywhere. So if you go to Google and type mosques demolished in Saudi Arabia or Iran or Pakistan, whatever, you will get a list of prominent mosques which have been demolished by the state. For example, for building roads, they have demolished mosques in Saudi Arabia. The mosques built on the direction of Prophet Muhammad in Makkah was also demolished by the Saudi Arabian government. UNESCO protested, and they wrote back to the UNESCO that you are trying to teach us what they call as idol worship. There's nothing sacred about Muhammad building a mosque, because mosque is for reading namaz. Namaz can be read anywhere. So the principle that a mosque can be shifted, authorizedly, not unauthorizedly, or it could be demolished, is an accepted principle of Islam all over in all Islamic countries. Now, what is the difficulty for a Muslim, for the Muslims of India to say that, yes, we want a mosque, you give us another place. And we have actually designated place across the Saryu River. And this, you see, is where we believe as faith Ram was born. I can build a mosque anywhere else, but I can't build a Ram Lala Mandir anywhere else, because except in the place of birth. So why can't the Muslim community say, as a compromise, you build us another mosque and you have your Ram temple here? And they're not very far. Across the Saryu River is not very far. But this determination, no, it will be there. When you know already there is a temple which has been certified by the Allahabad High Court. Now, what kind of attitude is this? What can I do to persuade them? The Supreme Court Chief Justice tells me, I'm willing to negotiate. I'm going to tell him on 31st. I've talked to all of them. All of them have now come to the view that they know that we mean business, we are going to do it anyway. Either my way or the highway. So therefore, they have said now, let the Supreme Court give an order and we'll accept it. I'm saying for a simple thing like this, 40,000 temples were demolished. We are not saying all should be returned. We are only saying that there are only three. Krishna temple in Mathura, Kashi Vishwanath in Varanasi, and this one. I think the Muslim community should, since a mosque is only a place for reading namaz, namaz can be read on the road, can be read in your drawing room, can be read in an aeroplane, and they do so. Why can't they accommodate this wish of the Hindus?
You know, it seems a rational proposition, what you're saying. Do you think it comes back to the problem of articulation? That, like you said, it is articulated with a desire to disrupt rather than to persuade. And it is, and you are, if you sounded as you are sounding on this ALGEBRA stage, then, you know, I'm sure many people wouldn't find it hard to stomach that. That's one point. And the second is, it's not just you, I'm not just talking about you, but the entire axis of the Hindutva right does it as an act of dominance, you know, rather than of persuasion and of...
I'll deal with that point. First of all, let me tell you that Owaisi told me that you are the most dangerous Hindu I've met. I said, why? He said, you're so articulate. In fact, they think I am a bigger danger because I might fool the Muslims into agreeing with me and that sort of thing. They would prefer somebody who's, you know, screaming away with a trishul than a person like me. But articulation is on the process, but there are so many vested interests. You'll be surprised to know that two of the most hardline Muslim parties in the Ram temple are not asking for a mosque. They say this is our property. And how is it your property? It was originally, Hindus were there before Muslims. They say, yes, yes, it was Hindu property, but we captured it, and by adverse possession, it has become ours. Now, I can't understand, they are not fighting for a masjid at all. It's not a question of one religious demand versus another religious demand. Here somebody says, this is my property. So I think it's easy to say articulation. I am ready to be articulate. With my son-in-law, I am very articulate. And he has already been brainwashed by me, as they say.
But Dr. Swamy, why would you, we'll move on. There are just a couple of points I'd like to make. One, why would you not extend that courtesy to your public life? You know, the way you speak to Mr. Haidar should be how you speak to the public, is one point. The other is that, again, the mistake that I think all Indian politicians make is to speak to Muslim clerics. Much like the Hindu right doesn't represent the Hindu, the Muslim clerics don't represent the Muslims of India. And we're really only speaking to the most bigoted always. And the third point is that partly why today the Ram Mandir has become a point of distress is because thousands of car sevaks got onto it and broke it down. And so it has become a symbol of violence and dominance rather than of persuasion, you know.
See, people commit crimes, they have to be prosecuted, and in this case, they are being prosecuted. You can't hold the whole Hindu community responsible for it. Many of us, in fact, at that time, you didn't quote me, I had condemned this act. I said, this is not the way we're going to do it, because at that time, Chandrasekhar was Prime Minister, I was the Minister of Law, and we were the ones who were negotiating with Mr. Shahabuddin. We had almost come to a settlement. Then, unfortunately, our government fell, and Mr. Narasimha Rao's government came, and this happened. The issue is this, you see, you are using Hindu right, Hindu fanatic, everybody in with one brush, you see. The fact is that the Hindu right is very articulate. I'm ready to debate with any. In fact, you find that most people in these channels, they want me and OIC together because he's a hardline Muslim, I'm a hardline Hindu, apparently. And both of us have a very civilized debate. And I think that process should go on. I think, first of all, I think of Hindu Muslims as my blood brothers because the DNA says so. But I can't make them forget their history. We have been through a long series of butchery, destruction. I'm not holding them responsible, but they should also not identify with them. Nobody should identify with Aurangzeb. How many people protested when we changed the name of Aurangzeb Road to Dr. Abdul Kalam's name? So that mindset, I must take you back a little in history. Please don't misunderstand what I'm telling you, but this is historical fact. The British, when they created India and Pakistan, there was only India, there was no Pakistan, so they had to create a legal fiction. So they had a bill passed in the House of Commons called the Indian Independence Act. And that Indian Independence Act, the debate, if you read, speaker after speaker, including the Prime Minister, says, our object is to create a Muslim-governed Pakistan and a Hindu-governed India. Ambedkar pounced on that, the man who was the chairman of the drafting committee, and said, let's have population exchange. But the rest of the leadership of the Congress said, no. If the Muslims who want to stay in India are welcome to stay in India. This is something we have never questioned. And on the other hand, Pakistan has become a theocratic country. Nobody wants, even now the Pakistani civil society is admiring our society. They wonder why we can't have, Pakistan can't have what we have. So my job is shock and awe, but at the same time make them rethink. And I think we have come a long way. Don't say we are a fringe group, because now we are getting sweeping election victories. Mr. Modi, I have convinced him that nobody has won an election on governance. Narasimha Rao produced the best governance. Narasimha Rao produced the best governance in our history. Growth rate went from 3.5% to 9%. And his party was such a badly defeated party that he got half the number of seats. Mr. Vajpayee, who was all your liberal heroes, a hero to all your liberals.
Well, not quite mine. But
okay.
That's another piece of history, but we'll come to that.
So he talked about India shining, and internally our cadre and all disliked him intensely. But he couldn't win. In fact, he advanced the election thinking he would win because he believed journalists like you see that we are going to win. And he advanced the election by 6 months and we lost. Morarji Desai produced the best price inflation control in the history of India, and he was badly defeated. In this country, when an election is there, like in most countries, like it has recently happened in America, it's emotion that counts. But you've got to be careful with emotion because there are countries which emotions got out of hand, like Germany in the 20s and 30s. We must be in the control of the hardline elements. And today I can say with firmness, with confidence, that many of us in the BJP can any day control these fanatics and keep them in their place whenever we want.
Are you then saying, when you make that assertion, are you saying that Muzaffarnagar happened with intention, that you did not want to control Muzaffarnagar? Are you saying then that Gujarat happened with intention, you did not want to control it?
First of all, what happened in Muzaffarnagar and what happened in Gujarat is not what you think had happened. I'm willing to have a separate debate on that, because I've collected the data on it and I can prove to you. And you see, for all this media campaign, no court, in fact, even the UP government has not filed a case. That is the Akhilesh government. So, the same thing with Gujarat. Yes, the burning of those 56 women and children in Godhra had put the people mad, but it lasted only 2 days. It was brought under control. And the true picture is something different from what the media has been portraying. This is my opinion. I'm willing to debate with the media. But the media doesn't like me very much, so they don't invite me for such debates. But I am telling you, don't please go by these events. And certainly, I don't think it is instigated by us in any of these events.